again for dropping by the channel. If you like the content, if you're new to the channel, please hit subscribe, share the video if you enjoyed it, if you felt it was useful. Now let's get into this. So we're doing something completely different, right? We are not talking about boxing news. We are not talking about any of that. In this video, we are going to be going over a career of a fighter called David Price, who many of you will know. Now, I've done career reviews in the past, but this is going to be altogether different, okay? Altogether different. We are going to be asking the question, what the F happened to David Price in his career? How a fighter who had such a good amateur pedigree, who was tipped for big things, could really plateau at British level. Well, in this video, we're going to look into it. So we are going to ask the question, what the fuck happened to David Price? Let's get into this. David Price's career could be summed up in a couple of words. You know, he was a fighter who had potential. He had tremendous punching power, massive height, massive reach, massive size. But he lacked certain things. He lacked the punch resistance to really cut it. But in any division, whether it be heavyweight or not heavyweight, punch resistance is important. But you can protect a fragile chin, as Vladimir Klitschko has done very well over the course of his career. But David Price's biggest issue was his fragile mind. That is something that cannot be protected. No matter who you are, if you get into a boxing ring and you are not all up there, and what I mean by all up there is in terms of focus switched on, it will show up in the boxing ring. Now, David Price, if we look at his amateur career, very good amateur. You know, he gold medaled for the UK in the European Championships 2008. He also won a bronze medal in the 2008 Olympics, which I believe was in China. That was the year Deontay Wilder won the bronze medal as well. So all this coming into the pros was looking very good for David Price. It was looking that, you know, essentially, or ostensibly I should say, that, you know, we were onto something potentially with this guy. You know, big heavyweight, knocking people out, could be good, right? He signed with Frank Maloney, who at the time was probably one of the bigger promoters in the UK, because Eddie Hearn at the time really wasn't doing anything, or Matchroom in general really wasn't doing much in terms of boxing. They were focusing primarily on snooker and darts. At the top of the ladder in the UK anyway, it was Frank Warren. But at the time, Sky had an open broadcasting deal with other promoters. So if you signed with a Frank Maloney, if you signed with a Dave Caldwell, Mick Hennessy, etc., you would still be shown on Sky. So he was on the Sky platform. His career really, for the first part, was really just knocking over journeymen. Really just, you know, fighting a who's he. So there's not really anything to gauge from that. Although David Price looked good in doing it, most fighters look good in knocking out a who's who a journeyman. You know, that goes without saying, especially heavyweights who have the punch and power David Price has. The first real step up, if you want to call it a step up, came in 2011 when he fought Tom Dallas. Now, Tom Dallas at the time was an undefeated prospect as well in his own right. Tom Dallas would go on to be a journeyman, would go on to finish his career, I think, getting knocked out by Dave Allen, if memory serves me correct. It could have been, was it Dave Allen? I'm pretty sure it was Dave Allen who finished Tom Dallas's career. So Dallas's career at the time was seen as, you know, an up-and-comer, and him and David Price being matched together. It was a mismatch. David Price blew him out of the water, knocked out Tom Dallas, as you see in that picture there. It was not competitive. And this is when we started to see Pricey really step up, you know, in terms of the level of opposition he'd been fighting before that, which was just no-hopers, to a level where people were starting to sit up and take note. And the fact of the matter was, he went in his next fight against John McDermott, a man who had given Tyson Fury all he can handle. Many people, including myself, believe that John McDermott won the first Tyson Fury fight. He didn't get it on the scorecards because Terry O'Connor, I believe, was the acting referee for that fight. But many people, myself included, believe that John McDermott won the Tyson Fury fight. What did David Price do? Well, he went out and blew him out and around. You know, big statement. A big statement to your competitor, who was Tyson Fury at the time, because lest we forget, there was no AJ at this time. AJ was still, and I don't even think AJ had medaled in the Olympics. I don't even think he'd won his gold medal at the time. So AJ was still an amateur. So there was no Dylan White, there was no up-and-comers, there was no Dubois, there's none of any of this. It was really, if you think about it, the two main guys, at least at domestic level, if you don't count David Haye, were David Price, Tyson Fury. Naturally, people are going to compare the two. If they have similar opponents, they're going to compare the two. So obviously David Price done a much better job in one fight than Tyson Fury did in two fights. So David Price moves on. David Price will go on to fight Sam Sexton in his next fight and win that fight via first round KO. Now, what I want to point out is this was all happening in the year 2012. David Price fought 4 times that year, okay, winning them all, of course, in good fashion. He fought John McDermott, Sam Sexton, Audley Harrison, and Matt Skelton. We're going to touch on each individual fight. We're going to explain as well what happened at the end of the year and what the perspective of the fans at David Price at the time was. Now, the John McDermott fight, as I said, was a statement, because this is a man who had 2 fights with Tyson Fury, who was seen in the UK time as the next big thing, the next up-and-comer, along with David Price. Okay, so what David Price did was took him out in clinical fashion. Then he goes and he fights Sam Sexton. This was for the vacant Commonwealth and the vacant British heavyweight title, as far as I believe. So Sam Sexton at the time was British level. He was a much better Sam Sexton than Sam Sexton we saw getting knocked out by Hughie Fury. This was a much fresher Sam Sexton. David Price, look at it on screen. He took care of him. He took care of Sam Sexton. All right. Next fight was against Audley Harrison. Now, I'm not going to say it yet. I'll say it when I get to the end of 2012, and you'll realize the extent of the downfall. That's what we're going to call it, right? You realize the extent of it then. David Price goes in there against Audley Harrison. Audley Harrison, Olympic gold medalist. You know, he'd so much pedigree. There's so much expected of him. You know, he'd had that world title fight against David Haye where it was embarrassing. It ruined boxing on Sky box office. It really did for a couple of years. It took Carl Froch to really save it. You know, that's really what it did. It ruined Sky box office, really, that David Haye fight. David Price goes in there with Audley Harrison. You know, David Price, the Olympic bronze medalist, the guy they were hyping. He goes out there and he flattens Audley Harrison. Flattens him. All right. He was looking good in victory. Very good in victory. To the point where people were thinking he could beat Tyson Fury if he fights him. And Tyson Fury, I believe there was money from Frank Maloney. I think it was something like 500 grand that was offered to Tyson Fury to happen next, or happen early in 2013. They wanted that fight. They were keen on getting Tyson Fury versus David Price. This was a Tyson Fury who was not the finished article that we know and see today, or we knew and saw in 2014, 2015. This was a Tyson Fury who just started work with Peter. This was Tyson Fury coming off the back only the year before of having fought Nevin Pikic, haven't had shaky fights against John McDermott, being, you know, grossly overweight, you know, aesthetically not looking good. So this was a Tyson Fury where people were looking at him where they were thinking, hang on a sec, you know, you're looking shaky. Dave Price here, he's blowing these guys out of the water. You know, guys you fought and went life and death with, he's blowing them out of the water. Dave Price finished the year with a first round, was it first round or second round? I think it was actually a second round stoppage of Matt Skelton. All right. That Matt Skelton fight is important. While David Price won that fight, right, he won it comfortably, there was moments in that fight that set the scene for what was to come. Uncomfortable scenes. Not necessarily Price being hurt, but when Matt Skelton, who was not a good heavyweight, put David Price under pressure, we saw little mental vulnerabilities in that fight. All right, those who watched that fight, go back and watch it, you'll see it. Looking uncomfortable. And if you're looking uncomfortable against Matt Skelton, that's a worry. A lot of people didn't put any sway on that. You know, they kind of just let it go. End of 2012 ended. David Price being named ESPN Prospect of the Year. 2012, he was the Prospect of the Year. This is the high point of David Price's career. This is when he is getting so much praise from fans. Comments you'll see on screen just there. Here's 2 I chucked just random, and I had to find these on YouTube. 2 comments we'll see on screen. I'm going to read them out for you. The first one reads, Price is so relaxed with a superb jab. Give him time, a few more fights, and he'll murder anyone in the division, including the Klitschkos. That's what the first comment reads. The second comment reads, I think Tyson Fury is a limited fighter, mate, because the guy was responding to someone. He's saying Tyson Fury is a limited fighter. I reckon Price will do him if and when it happens. So this was the consensus with David Price towards the end of 2012, or at the end of 2012. People thought he would beat Tyson Fury. People thought he was the next big thing for British heavyweights. People thought that other than the Klitschkos, and maybe, possibly, David Haye, and they weren't convinced about that. Oh no, they weren't. They were the only fighters David Haye or David Price shouldn't be in there with. Everyone else, just push him to one side. We're looking at David Price. I said earlier on that about Audley Harrison that I'll wait until the end of 2012 to tell you. Most people will know. Audley Harrison is David Price's best win. Yes, he is. Oh, yes, he is. For those who haven't, for those who are new to the channel or new to boxing, or maybe watching this not being fully up to speed with boxing, I'm gonna break it to you gently that at this point we're in December 2012. Dave Price is at his high. A fight just been announced between him and Tony Thompson, who is probably the best American heavyweight at the time. Yeah, probably the best American heavyweight at the time. Coming off a loss to Klitschko. A world level fighter. I'm just gonna be frank with you people. For those who don't know, it goes downhill from here. And you're gonna want to strap yourselves in, because it's gonna go down. It's gonna go down and down and down again. Let's strap ourselves in. People want to know what the F happened to David Price. Well, I'm going to tell you. February 2013, David Price went in there against Tony Thompson. An overweight Tony Thompson, who was in the worst shape of his career aesthetically. Echo Arena. I think there was 6,000 fans all cheering David Price's name. All fully expect him to win. The second round came along. And a right hook from Tony Thompson right round the eardrum of David Price. Didn't look like a great shot. Looked fairly innocuous, truth be told. It was enough to knock David Price down. Granted, he did get up before the count of 10. But his legs were gone. He couldn't continue. The referee waved it off, and he was right to do so. That right there was the beginning of the end. Now, I want to touch on something. Had David Price, that loss happened, right? We pushed that to one side. It happened. Had David Price been built up the right way, his career might have turned out different. Because as I've said several times, I've said it in this video, you can protect a fragile chin if you are 6'8" with tremendous punching power. You can protect that. But you cannot protect a fragile mind. You cannot protect yourself if you have poor confidence, which David Price clearly has. David Price was riding on the crest of a wave of success. His confidence was probably super high. Now, when that confidence knock happened, what do you think happened? His confidence went right back down to a low center of confidence, because we all have different variations of confidence. You know, you could be up here and your confidence get knocked down to here. That's where it is. David Price's could be down there, way down there. So what do you do with a fighter where that's happened to them, right? You need to build them back up gradually. So you give them some in-between fights. You let them knock over some guys. Maybe you have a similar style or similar characteristics to that opponent. You don't put them in an immediate rematch. Guess what happened? Yeah. So we get the immediate rematch. David Price versus Tony Thompson. Big crowd. Redemption. You know, he had Lennox Lewis looking after him as well. Lennox Lewis is a man who knows what it's like to lose in unexpected fashion, in early fashion, in front of your home fans, as he did against Oliver McCall. He knows how to come back. So it was looking okay from David Price. You know, aesthetically he looked good. So he knew what he had to do. Now, David Price, I'm sorry if I haven't said David Hay, but David Price went in there. All right, and he dropped Tony Thompson heavily in that second round. Heavy knockdown. You'll see it there. Writing was on the wall. It's going to be a win. He's going to get it. Count of 9 3/4. Tony Thompson gets up. With that, defeat was almost inevitable for David Price. Because you've hit this guy with your best shot and he's got back up and he is putting it on you and you don't know what you can do. You are still not fully cognizant, not because you've been concussed, but because you're in there with a guy who's beaten you only recently. And as much training as you've done, as many hours on the road as you've put in, when it tough gets going, or when it gets tough, the energy just went. David Price wasn't hurt from headshots in this fight. The only thing that was hurt was his pride. The only thing that was hurt was his gas tank. Everything just got up on top of him. And in the 5th round, he capitulated mentally, which to me is way worse than being chinned. You know, people this is heavyweight boxing at the end of the day. People get caught with good shots. It happens. Even in fights you're winning. Look at Dylan White and Povetkin. This is what happens in heavyweight boxing. But for someone to capitulate mentally in any weight division, any weight class, that is not a good sign. And we'd seen that from David Price in the past. So when David Price lost the rematch, Frank Maloney cut away from boxing. David Price went to Adam Boot. He didn't stay there very long, which I think would have been a good decision. He went over to Germany and he started fighting no-hopers. But he needed to do that. He needed to build himself back up. He needed so much help to get him back to where he needed to be. He needed to be fighting knockover after knockover after knockover. He even went through a bit of adversity in one of the fights where he was dropped by a clothesline. But he got back up to win. He went 10 rounds. You know, he was answering questions. He was going rounds. He was coming through adversity. So come 2015, 2 years removed from the Tony Thompson defeats, we had David Price who felt the need, who felt confident enough to go to Germany to fight Teppa. Oh, and lest we forget, Tony Thompson had drug issues to an extent with the 2 wins over David Price. So David Price was thinking, okay, this guy needed a little bit of extra help to beat me. I'm going in here with this guy Teppa, who was dangerous, who was looking dangerous, who smashed Martin Rogan's face to pieces. But David Price, I'm sure at the time, his confidence would have been nowhere. I don't think David Price's confidence would have ever been as high as it was come the end of 2012. But getting those wins, getting back in the win column, coming through adversity, going rounds, that would have told him something that, yes, I can do these things. I can answer these questions. You know, I can go rounds. I can go late into a fight. I can come up after getting knocked down. I can come up and get knocked down to win this fight. So I can answer these questions. So I'm going to go in there with this Teppa guy, and I am going to make the fans remember something. I'm going to give them something to remember. And we did get something to remember. It wasn't from David Price, though. It was from John Rawlin.
Oh, dear. Well, it is all going horribly wrong.
You know, I do have to say, that is probably the only good thing John Rawlin has ever done on commentary in a boxing match. That line in that fight, it was probably the only good thing. That Teppa fight was a devastating knockout loss for David Price. It was a fight where he wasn't even competitive. He just got steamrolled. Walked straight through. It was just everything that could have went wrong did go wrong in that fight. But then, subsequently, after the heartache of that loss, Teppa, who, lest we forget, was not the body beautiful type. Well, there you go. He was found with half of Mexico in his, system, basically. That, again, is the 3rd loss for David Price. I believe that was overturned with no contest. And the 3rd drug issue. But this was way worse. This guy was on all kinds of stuff. You have to take what little shred of comfort you can get. And I'm sure David Price was very angry after that fight. Not with the fact that he lost. Obviously, he would be angry with that. But the fact that he was in there against a man who was cheating. And as a fighter, you can look at that situation. You can tell yourself, right, I did lose. I did get knocked out. But the guy had all kinds of stuff in his system. If he didn't have said stuff in his system, would he have even beat me? Would he really have beat me? You know, that's the question. David Price then goes and signs up with Dave Colwell. Starts working with him. Starts fighting on Eddie Hearn shows. Fights a guy called Vyacheslav Padasar. He's a Czech heavyweight. Now, David Price throughout his whole career had been weighing in the 240s or 250s. he made a decision that he would pack on extra weight. Started coming into fights in the 270s, right? Very heavy for a big man like that. He's carrying around a lot of weight already, so to add more weight on, you would imagine that is going to hinder him. But apparently David Price said it made him stronger. He was hitting harder, he was more durable. Well, you know, he had 2 fights, one in the UK and one in Germany, where he was in the 270s. You know, he was very heavy. Then there came the night, February 2017. A night where he had the chance to exercise some of them demons. He was going to fight Christian Hammer. Christian Hammer, not a particularly good heavyweight, it has to be said, right? Not a particularly good heavyweight, but a heavyweight nonetheless, who had a decent amateur background, had a couple of wins on his resume, was not a no-hoper, to say the least. Would have been a better win than Audley Harrison, that's definitely true. But more importantly, he was coming off the back of a win over Teppa. Because we saw what a clean Teppa is like. Not very good. So, in a way, going in there against Christian Hammer, you could say, this is the man who beat me, and I have a chance to beat him. I have a chance to beat the man who beat Teppa. I could exercise that demon. And David Price went in there. He went in there to that fight with Dave Colwell. Very heavy, it has to be said, in the 270s. But Christian Hammer, he looked terrible. That was a short notice fight for him. He looked terrible in there. You know, he was way overweight. Not normal weight you'd expect Christian Hammer to be fighting at. So the writing was on the wall for David Price to finally get that decent win. To, you know, right the wrongs of the past and go in there and just get the win. Yes, this is going to happen. Oh man, it's tragic. Oh boy, it didn't go like that. You know, it didn't. This was a reasonably competitive fight, right? It was. This was a reasonably competitive fight the whole way through. Come the 5th round, where things were getting tough for David Price because, you know, Krishnan wasn't going away. He was putting it on David Price. We saw the mental fragilities rear their ugly head again. But, at the end of the 5th round, David Price hit Krishnan with an uppercut that dropped him and hurt him bad. But he got back up. And like the Tony Thompson in the second fight, he put it on David Price. And David Price, in similar fashion, he capitulated again. He ended up getting stopped. More down to fatigue than the actual concussive effect of the shots. The 4th loss of Price's career. In many ways, this was the most damaging. Because this was a fight he really should have won. This was not a fighter who beaten him previously, like Tony Thompson. This was not a fighter who was going to get popped, like Teppa. This was an okay heavyweight, but on similar par with David Price. He beat the man who beat David Price. David Price was getting the benefit. He was the home fighter. Christian Hammer was taking this fight in late notice. He should have won. He didn't. And he lost it in similar fashion to how he lost the Thompson fight. You would imagine that would have done more damage than the knockout he suffered against Teppa. And people were questioning, would David Price come back? I questioned it. A lot of people questioned it. And I looked at David Price and I kind of thought to myself, like, someone like this, is it even that? It's the mental fragilities. It's the chin fragility. Is it even that? Is David Price really that good? You know, I mean, how good is he in truth? Is he British level? Is he European level? Because any chance he had of getting to world level has been derailed by these losses, has been derailed by the lack of confidence, been derailed by the lack of career progression, correct career progression. Any chance of that was derailed. You know, you can't go back in time and redo it. Much as we'd all like to do things differently, we can't do that. What we have now is what we have. Do we have a fighter that's just not good? Now, you can ask that question to anyone in the boxing circle, but David Price would we ask someone else? I mean, is it true? Is David Price... If you have a fighter who has a fragile chin, a fragile mind, okay skills, is he really good enough to compete at world level? Maybe I'll ask Martin Brundle and Murray Walker. Is David Price good enough?
Well, it's a fairly short debate, Murray. End of message. 3 minutes to go.
So what does David Price need to do to rebuild? Is there any hope of him really making a go at the upper echelons of the heavyweight division without just taking a fight on short notice? Well, he had a comeback fight against Kamil Sakalovsky. Sakalovsky, who is a decent journeyman. He's a very good journeyman. You know, there was moments there where Pricey was looking a little bit wary against Kamil Sakalovsky. Even though Pricey won every round, on the scorecards anyway, there was rounds in there that Sakalovsky was very competitive in. So questions started getting asked, who will Dave Price fight next? Will he fight, a couple more journeymen? Will he improve? If I was in David Price's management team, I would have had him fight maybe 10 journeymen. Steadily getting better, just to increase his confidence. That didn't happen. 2018, March 2018, he fights Alexander Povetkin, a legitimate top 10 heavyweight, a top 5 heavyweight. This is the biggest fight of David Price's career. This is the biggest name on his resume. He has adequate time to prepare. But this is a very, very dangerous man. We all expect Dave Price to lose. We don't expect this fight to be even competitive. We think that when Povetkin lands a semblance of a hard shot, that Price is going to be out cold. The fight starts. I'm more nervous for this fight when I watched it live than I was for the main event. Most of my friends who were hardcore fans, we were all nervous more so for this fight than we were for the main event. We were all more excited and intrigued for this fight, more so than the main event. Price is not doing too bad for the first few rounds. He's staying away from Povetkin, but any time Povetkin even throws a right hand and it even grazes Pricey, we're all just like, we're all wincing. We're like, oh, when is he going to go? Third round comes along. Povetkin lands a left hook. Pricey goes down. This is the first time we really saw spite in David Price. He was annoyed when he got dropped. He wasn't hurt necessarily. He was angry. He came back and he landed a left hook on Povetkin that rocked Povetkin and set him up into the ropes to the point where the referee had to give Povetkin a standing count. He didn't look that steady on his legs. It happened in the dying seconds of the round. You just wish the guy would get a break. If that happened like a minute and 30 seconds to go, who knows what would have happened. But as such, Povetkin got the minute's rest. And he came out in the 5th round and, well, yeah, he knocked Price out. That was the worst knockout Price has ever suffered. Seriously, that was the worst. You can say with the Urka, that was the worst. That was a horrible, horrible, horrible knockout. Alright? And then you really thought that is it. That's the end of it. Well, Pricey signed on to fight Sean Turner. That fight never happened. He took a fight against Sergey Kuzmin on the AJ Povetkin undercard. Kuzmin was a Russian prospect. Still is. Up and comer. Pricey boxed very well. He was winning the fight. Seriously. Watch it. He was winning. He thought maybe, just maybe, is this what Pricey, is this the win he needs to rejuvenate his career? Because Kuzmin is undefeated, he had a decent amateur practice. This is the win. Fight gets stopped in the corner. And I'm thinking, watching it live at the time, I'm thinking, Kuzmin? They're retiring Kuzmin? They retired Pricey. He had an injury, a bicep injury, I believe it was. He took that fight on short notice, knowing he was injured. Gave it a go for a few rounds, and that was that. This was a 2012 Prospect of the Year. He's taking short notice fights where he's only got a couple of rounds to get the job done, and if he can't, they have to stop it. That's the fall. The next 2 fights for Pricey, because he did fight again. He fought Tom Little. That was a nothing fight. Then he fought a man by the name of Cash Ali, who none of us have ever heard of at the time. David Price has had such an unusual career. He's had fighters, he's knocked fighters out badly. He's been knocked out badly. He's had fighters fail drugs tests. He's had short notice jobs. But even he, I'm sure, never thought this would happen. He beat Cash Ali. Beat him via DQ. Fight was a lot tougher than a lot of us expected it to be. This was not your average win. And when I say he beat him by DQ, he beat Cash Ali because Cash Ali decided, you know what? I can't win this fight. So rather than, take a dive, rather than, headbutt David Price, rather than do any of that to get out of this, I'm going to bite him. Yeah. That's what happened. Cash Ali bit David Price. And David Price got the win. A win's a win. I'm sure David Price would have rather have knocked him out rather than getting bit because you left teeth marks, and God only knows, the mouths are very dirty places. You don't want to be getting bit anyway. So that's what happened there. Then, as luck would have it, he gets another, bit of a notice. Pay-per-view. Undercard of Dylan White versus Oscar Rivas. Against the pay-per-view, the guy you put on every pay-per-view, Dave Allen. Now, Dave Allen and David Price, they've been talked about fighting, I think, as far back as 2016. Never thought we'd see this fight. This was seen as Dave Allen's coming out party. He was in shape. Dave Allen was off the back of a win over Lucas Brown. This was set for Dave Price to lose, just to one last hurrah. David Price didn't read the script. He beat the living crap out of Dave Allen. So bad that they had to stop the fight. So bad that Allen needed oxygen. One of the worst beatings Dave Allen's ever took. Next to Tony Yoka, that's the worst beating. That is one of the best wins. And that's not exactly saying something. But that is one of the best wins of David Price's career. You start to think, could he make a play for a British European title? Seriously? There's word of, Pricey out in November on Callum Smith's undercard. Could he do something? Could he be useful? Is he gonna stop taking short notice gigs? Then he goes to take short notice gig to fight Derek Chisora. Yeah, we know how this fight ended. And David Price hasn't fought since. He is now, 37 years old. Whether David Price fights or not again remains to be seen. I've given my 2 cents on his career in a nutshell. That is what the F happened to David Price. To me, it's a story of someone with potential who has vulnerabilities, but there was ways to hide them. But hiding that fragile mind was something that he just couldn't do. Do I think David Price underachieved in his career? Yes, I do. I think there was a European title in there. I do. I think there was a European title in there. That might still be, but probably unlikely now. Do I think that things could have been handled different for David Price? Yes, I do. Definitely. Managed a little bit different, matchmaking a little bit different. As I said, he could have had a European title with a bit of different matchmaking, a bit of different management. What I see with David Price now, I see a man who is fighting to make a living. Although I'm sure he has a decent living, he still wants some paydays. David Price, what I would say to him if he watches this video is that he should really go down the road of broadcasting, of punditry, because he is one of the best boxing pundits I've seen in a while. His predictions on fights are normally spot on. And when you look at some of the competition he has in terms of boxing punditry, it's not all that good. I'm not thinking of anyone specifically. I'm not naming names or anyone specifically, but he's a good pundit, David Price. So if David Price doesn't return to the ring, and he is, deciding to go down different roads, should he watch this video, I would say 2 things. I would say, well done on your career, because you've achieved more than many people wouldn't. You've done more than most people would dare dream. You know, you have achieved things that people you've beat who were expected to achieve things haven't achieved. Think of your health and think of the opportunities that are there outside of the ring, as in punditry, which is a road you should definitely go down. I'm going to call this video to a close here. I hope everyone's enjoyed it and they've enjoyed watching this and that they've got something out of it. What I will say to anyone, not just David Price, but someone who is maybe on the lower end of the confidence scale, who is suffering from the low self-esteem, doing something as simple as even making a YouTube video, a bit like what we're doing here, the amount that's going to boost your self-esteem, finding new things that you can do, those are all good things to boost your self-esteem. Not giving a you-know-what about what people think. And I mean really, truly not giving a you-know-what about people think. All these things are little things you can do just to improve that little bit of self-confidence. Whether it be boxing related, whether it be worldly related, whether it be hell, whether it would be goddamn, video game related. I don't know, I don't play a lot of video games, but all those little things, they're all improvements. I hope you got something out of this video. I enjoyed making this. There's definitely going to be more. I hope you people enjoyed it. I hope everyone can smash the like button and let me know in the comment section what you thought of it. People, I've been G-Man. I've enjoyed this. Stay safe, people. I will talk to you. Peace.